Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Tuplex. Today's an exciting day because I've made the first step of several that we're going to need to complete phase 3, and that is the construction of our plastics outpost. It took me a few hours to get done, probably closer to 4. So I think it was good that I decided to build that offline, and then I can share the results with you here today. Before we head over there, though, I wanted to show you something I added up here to this little area. I wanted to start producing liquid biofuel, packaged liquid biofuel for the jetpack. The reason for that is that it's a very good fuel source to use for the jetpack because of a couple things. Number one, it burns slowly. So out of all the fuel types, this one will give you the most vertical lift you can get. I think you can get up to 50 meters with a single one. Right, and also because it burns so slowly, you can use that tapping technique to stay airborne for quite a while. So if you're flying, you can just tap to stay aloft, and you can keep that going for a long time with the liquid biofuel. What it lacks versus some of the other fuels is acceleration, but that's okay. I just wanted to stay aloft. So I set up this refinery. This uses solid biofuel and water to make liquid biofuel. That comes over here to this packager, where I'm feeding it empty canisters. And then I just have those going directly into a depot. I decided not to do a storage container as well. I don't think I really need it, since I'm going to be using this in fairly limited quantities. And if I need more containers, I need to come over here and just feed some plastic in there. So, but anyway, in my inventory, I've got 300, and then, plus whatever I keep on my person. Yeah, so that's great. And I got the water for this, from way over there where I built that big ladder to go up to the platform. I tried putting a water collector here in this stream, but it's not deep enough, so I had to go out a little bit further. But anyway, everything's underclocked slightly, and that works just great. So over here where I'm actually making the biofuel, I just put a splitter on the output, so that way some biofuel will be available in its normal form, so that I can use it with my chainsaw, and then the rest of it can go over to the liquid biofuel. So pretty handy. And without further ado, let us go over to our plastics area. I don't know if I've shown you this before, but I'm just kind of creating portals to the various parts of the base. So we have oil refining, we've got our coal power plant, we have the phase 2 factory, and the phase 3 factory we have yet to build. But let's head over there now, or head over to the plastics factory, and I'll show you what we have. While we're flying over, I want to show you something in the modeler. Right, so you may remember that initially our plan was to have 12 refineries each making plastic and rubber that would use all of the crude oil that we have available with no overclocking. And then with this recipe to create residual fuel from the heavy oil residue, we can make 240 fuel per minute, which is all well and good. However, there is a better way where we can make the same amount of plastic and rubber, and we can get 3 times as much fuel. And that's to use diluted fuel. And I mentioned diluted fuel earlier. At some point, there is a recipe where you can make diluted fuel by pumping water and heavy oil residue directly into a refinery. Or, I'm sorry, into a blender. But we don't have blenders yet. Those don't get unlocked until phase 4. But in phase 3, we can get the alternate recipe to make diluted packaged fuel, which puts it in a container. The problem is I can't send containers to my generators. So what I have to do is make the diluted packaged fuel and then immediately unpackage it. So, so what you'll see here is that, you know, this recipe takes packaged water as an input. So what I'm doing now in the plastics factory is I'm making packaged water with empty canisters and water, of course, sending those into the refinery to make the packaged fuel, and then unpackaging the packaged fuel into fuel. And by doing that, I get 3 times as much fuel and 3 times as much power. So let's take a look. Here is the new and improved plastics factory. We're going to have rail service coming in here pretty soon as well. Let's go up here so that we can get a better view. I guess I'll just fly up here. All right, so this is it. Like I said, it took me a while to build this. It's pretty massive, but this is exactly what I just showed you in the modeler. So let's go review, and I'll show you the entire build and explain how it works. Okay. Actually, let's start down here. All right, so starting down here, I connected all of the oil extractors. So you remember, this is the one that we started with initially. This is a normal node that's giving us 120 per minute. Over here, we have one of the pure nodes, which gives us twice as much. This gives us 240 a minute. And there's another pure node over there. So basically what I did is I ran if we look at this, we need 360 crude oil each to the plastic and to the rubber. So I did that by just combining one pure and one normal node for each bank of refineries. Right, so over here you can see like this pure node gets merged with this normal node, and then it goes upstairs using a Mark II pump. And we're using Mark II here because we need 360 per minute to flow through these pipes, which is more than what a Mark I pipe can handle. So once they merge, I use a Mark II pipe coming out that can handle up to 600. And then obviously you need a Mark II pump as well to take advantage of that greater flow rate. So I have 2 lines of oil being pumped upstairs, each one with 360 oil per minute. And then I also have, this is the water that I'm using for the packaged water. Same quantities here. I have 2 lines with 360 a minute, which I'm achieving with these 6 water extractors. Okay, and those all are going up into the main floor of the factory. So let's go up there, and we'll have a look at how this gets put together. All right, so here's the first of the oil lines, and you'll see that this is feeding 12 refineries making plastic. So 12 by 20, that's giving us the 240 per minute plastic. On the output, obviously we have the plastic going down belts, and then we have the heavy oil residue going down this pipeline all the way to the end. And then I put the rubber refineries facing it in the other direction. Okay, so the other line of crude oil comes in here. to all of these machines, and these are the ones that are making rubber. So I put in some catwalks here so that we can see how this looks, and we can see everything flowing down the belt. Okay, so from there, I have both belts going into smart splitters, and I'm sending the overflow to a sink, right? So the normal output I'm sending to these big industrial containers, and then I have some of it going into my dimensional depots, but you can see that these are full already. So I have all the excess going out the side, and then those merge together and go into a sink. Between the two, we're making 480 per minute, so that pretty much perfectly fills a Mark IV belt into the sink. Now, the reason I'm sinking everything besides the points is just because we have to do this in order to keep the heavy oil residue coming, which we need to have an uninterrupted power supply. So this is why, you know, if you're using your plastic production as a fuel source, your plastic and rubber production, you need to make sure that those machines can run continuously. Otherwise, they'll stop making oil, which means you'll stop making fuel and you'll lose power. So that's critically important. And this is giving us quite a lot of points on a continuous basis. I've collected quite a few tickets already, or coupons, if you want to call them. You can see I've got 131 as of now, so we're well on our way to 1,000, which is what I need. That's one of the last achievements that I need to 100% this game, so I'm looking forward to getting that done. All right, so that's our output of items, and then these we are eventually going to load into a train station, which I'm going to try to work on a little bit here in this episode. Okay, so all the residual oil, I have two separate pipelines of the residual, the heavy oil residue. Sorry. Because once again that adds up to 360, so I either need two Mark I pipes or I need one Mark II pipe, and in this case I just decided to use two Mark I pipes. Okay, so on the rubber side it comes out this way, and on the plastic side it goes forward from the other end. All right, so on to the next step. And there's another catwalk which might be useful for us. All right, so the heavy oil residue comes out, and that's going to those refineries. But before we get there, here's where we're making the packaged water. Okay, so we're using empty canisters and water, as should be fairly obvious by now. These are the two water pipes that we saw a little bit earlier. And actually, you know what? I think at some point I'll probably color code these. So, like for example, I could use that swatch to color code the pipes, you know, for water, for residue, whatever. That can make it easier to see what's going on around the base. But in any case, these are the water pipes. I needed two of those. So the first one is feeding the first set of 6 machines, and then the second pipe is feeding the second set of machines. And one nice thing about this design is that we need 12 refineries making fuel, making the packaged fuel, and we need exactly 12 packagers and 12 unpackagers. So this is all in a 1-to-1 ratio of production, right? So I have one water packager feeding one refinery, which feeds one unpackager, which we'll get to in a moment. Now the empty containers are all coming out of this storage. Okay, and once you fill the system with enough containers, you don't have to create any more. They're all just being recycled at this point. Once they get emptied, they go back into the container, and then from there they go back to feed these water packagers. And I had to use 2 lines here because we need to deliver 720 a minute, and our belts right now can only handle 480. So I have 2 lines coming out of this. That's why I use this big container, because it's kind of like a built-in splitter of sorts. And then off to the side here, I have this constructor that will make containers, which I'm feeding from my plastic output. And that just goes to a little merger here. So if I ever want to add more containers to the system, all I have to do is come in here and I can take this machine off standby and it'll start producing more canisters to add into the system. Right. But at this point, I don't really need any more. I've got, all the belts and machines are full of containers, and I have quite a few extras. So it's been running for a while like this, and so far everything's stable. Okay, so like I said, the packaging of the water goes on here, and it gets fed into those refineries. I go 6 machines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then down here is where I switch over to the other belt, right? So half of them come to the first 6, and then half of them feed the second 6 machines. And I did the same with the water pipes, as you can see here. So the first water pipe feeds the first 6 machines, and then I lift up the second water pipe and feed the second 6 machines. And it goes on like that. And it goes on like that all the way down the row. Okay. Now here is where we are feeding the heavy oil residue and the water into all these refineries. These are the refineries that are making the packaged fuel itself. Right? Now, these pipelines with the heavy oil residue, I'm connecting from both ends, so this is one continuous pipeline. So I'm feeding some from this side, and I'm feeding some from the other side, and somehow the fluids collide and get sent to where they need to go. And then I'm just using a pair of lifts to get the water, the packaged water from these machines into the refineries without having to clip through the pipe. Right, so it's kind of fun to run through here. It's like some kind of a party. All right. So 12 of these making packaged fuel. Now, once the packaged fuel is made, we have a single output from each one of these going into their respective unpackagers. And the unpackagers unpackage what we just packaged and send the empty canisters down a belt to go back into the container. Right? And again, 2 belts of containers, because one belt couldn't handle them all. So the first 6 machines go on one belt, and then the next set of 6 machines goes on another belt, and then these all just feed back into the container to get reused for the packaged water. Okay. And then the fuel that comes out is all going into this pipeline. And this is a Mark II. But this travels in 2 directions as well. So this maybe doesn't actually need to be a Mark II. It could probably be 2 Mark III pipes going to either side. But anyway, it's somewhat future-proofed. So all the fuel goes out. It goes into one of these industrial fluid buffers on each side. Now, one thing that is puzzling to me is that I'm producing exactly as much fuel as my generators can consume. And yet somehow these buffers continually fill up. Right? I'm making 720 per minute, and then in the power, that's running 36 fuel generators. 36 times 20 is 720. That gives me 9 gigawatts of power. And yet somehow I can empty these fluid buffers, and when I come back in a little while, they're going to be completely full again. So somehow I'm getting some extra fuel, or I'm not burning all the fuel. And yet my power production capacity is remaining pretty much steady over hours. I've had this running for a couple hours now like this, and I don't know. So if any of you know how to explain the fact that I'm getting extra fuel somehow, I would be very curious about that. Maybe there's a rounding error someplace. But yeah, these generators each consume 20 a minute. They give us 250 megawatts each, and I've got 32 of them, so I have 4 rows of 8. Okay, so out of the container over here to a splitter, if you will, and then I have a pipe coming down here with generators feeding off of both sides. Right, and then down here, again, a second pipe feeding banks of generators on both sides. And this is giving us gobs of power. Certainly enough power to finish phase 3, and maybe even a good way through phase 4. Phase 4 is where the power really starts to become something of an issue. You need a lot of power. And and a lot of the machines that you use in the later phases don't use a constant amount of power. They cycle up and down. So power management gets a little crazy in the coming phases, but for now we've got 13 megawatts. We're getting over a megawatt just from the power boost from our power augmenter. And like I said, these have been running steady. I'm pretty happy with this build. I'm actually a little bit proud of it. Because it works fine. You can see I've got a couple red light or yellow lights. Right, every once in a while a machine will go idle because its output is full. Right, like when there's 99 packaged fuel, it's gonna stop because it makes 2 at a time, and if there's no space here, then it'll stop momentarily. And again, that must have something to do with the fact that I'm getting extra fuel from somewhere. I don't know where or how, but it's happening. In fact, I was thinking I might even set up 1 additional generator just to suck off the excess. You know, even if I just have like 1 generator that's flapping up and down, if it keeps everything running steadily, I'd almost rather do that. But maybe one of you know what causes that to happen. But I'm not going to complain because I have lots of power, and it's very consistent. Okay, so that's the plastic outpost, you know, and I wanted to get this built first. We need to build this and the steel outpost first so that we can, because we need both of those for the phase 3 factory. So I haven't even started the phase 3 factory yet. I wanted to get this done first, and then for the next episode we'll probably take a look at the steel outpost. Whoops. All right, I didn't want to I didn't want to demonstrate that just yet. But let's do this real quick because this is fun. This is like a little this is a launcher. and you'll see where this liquid biofuel coupled with hypertube launchers can be pretty fun. So what this does is this launches you through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of entrances. Each one of these will accelerate you, and then we get launched out the end here. So watch how far we can go using this in conjunction with our biofuel thing. Right, you can travel, like, you can travel practically halfway across the map or more. Here, we'll pick this guy up. On a previous attempt, I got all the way out here. This is where I came from the home base, and I exited the hypertube, and then at speed, I went into the launcher, and I got all the way out to here in a single flight. So that was pretty impressive. Now, what do you do once you get out here? Well, hey, what's this? Coal? Nice. Yeah, once you get out here, a quick way to get back to base, at least with my settings, is just to click respawn. Because I have it set that I don't lose my items when I respawn. Now the problem is going to be when we go back, we're going to launch. So I'm going to have to take the cable express to get back over there. So let's head back over there. You'll see that I started to throw down some rail, and that's what I wanted to work on with you today, is getting the train station set up for the outpost, because it is a bit of a distance away, and so we're going to have to transport the plastic and the rubber by train to our phase 3 factory, which is going to be way over there someplace. And you'll see over here that I have started to put in some of the rail. So let's get down off of this, and I'll just, there, I cut the power to that first entrance so that I don't launch across the map every time I want to come over here. Yeah, so I started to lay down some rail. And this is pretty simple, and especially with the way that I spaced out these platforms and everything. Basically, all you need to do. Let me get over to this one first. All you need to do is in the middle of each one, you just click, and then join it up with the rail in front or behind, like so. So once all this stuff is in place, it becomes pretty easy to connect everything with our 2 rails, right? And this is a 2-way system, obviously. So the rail on the right side is the one that we're going to travel on, so we can go both directions. And I think I'm going to use single-headed trains here, like 1-4 trains, right, with 1 locomotive and 4 cargo wagons. Right, so the idea here is that we come down here, and then I'm going to build a train station over on the other side to pick up the goodies, and then loop around and then return on this piece of track. So let's start getting that set up. I'm going to first start throwing down some additional foundation, which is pretty quick with the blueprints I've got. And actually, I have the Mark II blueprint designer now, so I'll probably make new blueprints with 5x5 foundations, so it'll go even faster. But my idea is to have the train station over here where I'm collecting the material. That would seem to make sense. Okay. And I think what we'll do is we'll come this way and loop around and then enter the station. That way I can have That way I can have the station next to where the material is, which seems to make sense. All right, so we're going to start by placing down a train station. Train station is rather large, as you can see. Let's give ourselves a little bit of space. Let's see, is that enough space? No, let's do even more space. Okay, that should be good. And the stations are directional, so the curved end of the station is in the direction of travel of the train, and that triangle there is another indicator, right? So this is where the locomotive itself is going to stop. I'm gonna slide this forward a bit. Let's try that. So there's the station, and then I'm going to want 2 freight platforms. Okay, and I'm gonna have it so that the containers are on this side. So there's 1 and then 2. And then, like I said, I'm planning to do 1 4. So, but I don't think I need to use, I don't think I need like 2 cargo wagons of plastic and 2 cargo wagons of rubber. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm just going to put 2 empty platforms behind it. So this way it'll reserve the space, if you will, for additional cargo stations if I decide to add them. But if I don't need them, then, you know, we'll just leave it the way that it is. Okay, so I'm going to have to add some more foundation in order to make the, this turnaround happen. So let me do that here quickly. Whoops. Don't fall off. I'm using up concrete rather quickly. I upgraded the upload speed again on my dimensional depots. So it's a little bit faster now. I think it's at 120 upload speed. Makes a big difference. All right, and then we just run the rails. So this will be the rail that's outgoing from this station. And I want this to come down and join up with that track there. Okay, now the smallest radius you can make is 3 by 3 foundations. Okay, so if I go back 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. And then I go back from this point, 1, 2, 3. Then this is where I should make my curves to be nice and smooth and an even radius. There, just like that. And then the other bit of rail, let's come down here and we'll figure out how that needs to be laid out on the other side. Because in this case, I'll need to do a complete U-turn. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's good. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. So I think this is where let me see, is that gonna work? No, I think I need to do the straight bits first. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is where I need the incoming rail to start. All right, and then 1, 2, 3. So what I'll do, I'm gonna, right here, I'm just gonna lay in a small straight section of rail so that the end terminates in the proper orientation, and then I should be able to repeat that here, and that should give me a nice smooth U-turn. Which it does. Okay, so that part's handled. And well, concrete's cheap, so let's just go ahead and add some more foundation here. Now I can see that I'll probably start running up against a limitation in terms of how fast I'm using concrete versus how fast I upload it. So as a reminder, the dimensional depots, like the upload speed on dimensional depots it applies to the depot itself, not to the item that you're uploading. So you can have, for concrete, for example, you can have it going into multiple dimensional depots, and that will that'll multiply the rate at which you're uploading. Right, so you can have, 2 or 3 dimensional depots rather than just one, and you'll upload 2 or 3 times as fast. 1, 2, 3. Is that right? I guess we'll find out soon enough. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Okay. That's a little too far, so we'll have to do this in 2 pieces. Okay. I think that looks good. So now we have a plastic and rubber depot. So let's come over here and let's name the station. Plastic/rubber. Good. That'll update the sign. Okay, and then the train station needs power. Now, the nice thing about having a rail system is that the rails transmit power as well. So by connecting this to power, once we have a station on the other end, the station itself, we can connect to a power pole, and we can power everything from the station because the electrical power will transmit through the rails. Just FYI. So that's a convenient way to run power throughout your network. Okay, so now we need a train. So we want a locomotive. All right, that's the front end. And then for now, I'm only going to have 2 freight cars, because that's all we're going to load and unload. So if we jump inside here now, we can manually drive it. I would prefer to get out on the other side, but okay. All right, now let's hook up our product. So this is the plastic. And I'm going to connect this with my fastest belt. Even though I'm not producing 480 a minute, something to keep in mind when the train is loading and unloading, which takes about 30 seconds, these containers on the freight platform will turn off, so they won't be able to receive any more material during that loading and unloading process. So what I like to do is, if I have a separate container out here, I like to connect it with the fastest belt, or even two belts if you wanted to. That'll load it twice as fast. But in this case, I'm using the depot. So that way, after the loading is finished, it'll continue to buffer production in here while the loading and unloading is taking place. So that way, the loading and unloading is not going to interrupt your production or anything like that. Okay, and then, oh, I wanted to copy the belt. And then from the rubber, we got a straight shot there. Okay, so that means that the first car will hold rubber and the second car will hold plastic. Like that. Okay, and that'll take a while for it to fill up. We can help it along a bit. There you go. And I'll do the same here. Okay, so now the station's full, and then we can set up, well, we can start to set up a schedule here. Now, I don't have any stations on the other end, so there's nowhere to go, but if you press the Q key, that'll bring up the timetable. So right now it's set to manual driving. I'm going to edit the timetable. We're going to add this station, and then you can configure the settings. So, locomotive should stay at the station until, in this case, I think I want it to stay until it's fully loaded, right? Or you could say one load/unload has been completed. One has been completed versus fully loaded. Freight wagon is fully loaded. Yeah, you know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the difference is in this case. Well, we'll find out. And if you want to, you can add filters so that it only loads and unloads specific items. That's useful for if you have a train that... you might have a train that's carrying, you know, let's say 4 different items, but you only want it to load or unload particular ones at a particular station. This is how you do that. Now, in this case, we're not going to unload anything. Oh, save changes. You got to save it a couple times. And that reminds me that I need to check the configuration on these. Train settings, load. Okay. Yeah, these freight platforms are configured to load into the train by default. If you want it to unload from the train, you have to manually change that setting. Otherwise, your train will just sit there and nothing will happen. Okay. So let's turn on self-driving. And now it's going to load into the station. There you go. And now it's docking, and the docking is just the state where it's loading and unloading the train. Okay, and now it's done. Is it gonna keep doing that the whole time? Okay, let's turn off self-driving. All right, so now the train is full, and once we have a destination for it, we'll be able to send it there, and it'll automatically start moving material. So you can see here now the container, the station, the freight platform container, whatever you want to call it, that's starting to fill up again. Right, and it'll fill up quickly from the buffer, and then once my buffer runs out, then it'll just feed in as quickly as we're making things. Right, now be careful about power because the train stations themselves consume 50 megawatts. And then the actual train consumes power when it's running, and you can see down on the bottom you have a speedometer there, and it'll show you how much power it uses. So the faster it goes, the more power it uses. Acceleration uses power. Going uphill uses more power. So it's the power consumption on the actual locomotive is pretty realistic. Yeah, but that's it. As of now, we don't have anywhere to take it. So we'll get into that next time. And I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So for the next episode, I am going to start building the steel outpost, right, which will look something like this. Why are these going to a sink? Oh, okay. Yeah, these are going to a sink because I'm not putting anything in storage here, because our steel products are going into our personal storage over in the Phase 2 factory. Yeah, so this will be purely for export to other locations. So I will start building this stuff. I don't know if we looked at this in detail, but I'm going to be using a couple alternate recipes. I'm going to be using pure iron ingot, which allows us to mix water with iron ore to get better productivity out of the iron ore. I may revise this. Right now I have this set to where my limit, or the limiting factor here, is on how much coal I'm extracting, which right now I have set to 720, which is 3 pure nodes. But I'm gonna see what happens if I boost the production here so that I use all of the ore, and then I overclock coal to make up the difference, and I'll see what that looks like. But yeah, I'll be using the pure iron ingot alternate. I'll continue using the solid steel ingot alternate that we already have. For the concrete, I'm going to use the wet concrete alternate, so we can make a lot of concrete with few machines by adding in some water. And then I'm going to use the encased industrial pipe recipe to make the encased industrial beams. Let me show you that in game. I don't know if I've unlocked it already. Yeah, I have. So you can see the encased industrial pipe uses 6 pipes to get 1 encased beam, and 5 concrete. The 6 pipes use 3 ingots. Versus up here, 3 steel beams use 4 ingots and 6 concrete. Right now, this recipe is a little bit slower. You get 4 per minute instead of 6, but it uses less concrete and it uses less steel ingots. So this is a pretty good alternate. as long as you don't have really high volume requirements, which for the encased industrial beams, you know, you're generally not going to be using tons of those. So I'll be taking advantage of those for the steel factory. So I'll build that up, and then we'll review it in the next episode like we did with this one. And then after that, we will be ready to start building the actual Phase 3 factory, which should be a lot of fun. So I will see you all soon. Have a good one.